Is there ever really a bad time for a capital campaign? Hi, I'm Bill Stanczykiewicz. This is the first day from the Fundraising School, and I'm joined today by Dr. Gene Tempel, the Dean Emeritus of the Indiana University Lilly Family School of Philanthropy. In many ways, our founder. Because of Gene, the Fundraising School was donated to Indiana University, and Gene's vision led to the creation of the Center on Philanthropy, which is now the School of Philanthropy. And, Gene, I've always said when we have that Mount Rushmore of philanthropic leadership, you might be the only person on it. What a delight to have you back on our podcast.
Well, thanks, Bill, and thanks for inviting me back to talk about this important subject of the capital campaign.
And, there's so many things that you could talk about, have expertise in a wide range of fundraising activities. But I know that campaigns are near and dear to your heart. And so before we talk about, times of crisis, challenging seasons and so forth, can you just help remind our audience, what are some of those first steps when a nonprofit is thinking about, is it time for a campaign?
Well, no matter what the state of the economy, the things that nonprofit organizations need to think about is, first of all, they need to answer the question, what's the case for support? Because capital campaigns, all of giving, but especially capital campaigns, rest on the case for support. There has to be a compelling case for support. What is the greater need in society that would be fulfilled if we were able to bring these things into the organization, add assets to the organization to fulfill those needs? Do we need a larger building? Do we need additional building? Do we need to repair our building? These are the kinds of things, that's actually the very first question that needs to be answered. So no matter what the state of the economy, organizations should be thinking about this long range. What are our needs? And what are the needs of society, and what are our needs to fulfill those needs? And does it require special capital to meet those needs? And so answering those questions is the very, very first step.
And all in fulfillment of our mission, not a building for the sake of a building or more vans for the sake of more vans or whatever's in the campaign, but to help us fulfill our mission. And so, Gene, you and I, we both remember the not one, but two energy crises of the 1970s. We remember the stagflation that came out of that into the early 1980s. Remember the stock market bubble popped in 1987. And of course, we've had things like 9/11 and the Great Recession and COVID. And through it all, you have kept fundraising. So it raises this question as we record this, even though we're not in a recession now, there's lots of questions. People always wonder, how does that factor into my thinking and my planning as I'm wondering about, should I take on this huge endeavor of a comprehensive capital campaign?
Well, and I think the reason, thanks, Bill. Bill, thanks for reminding us about all those other hiccups. I want to come back to that in the end, because there's really no perfect time, as you've just illustrated. There's no perfect time to have a capital campaign, because you could have been in the middle of a capital campaign and one of those things happened. So we'll come back and talk about that. Let's come back and talk about that at the end.
Sure.
But the reason I think that organizations think so carefully about this is because they put themselves at great risk. They're typically going to raise money beyond what their normal annual capacity is. So they put the organization at great risk. We tell people we're going to do this, and it doesn't get done. Then what? So I think that's one reason that people don't like to do it. The other, they're so careful about it. The other thing is that capital campaigns put us at odds sometimes with donor timelines. So we have a timeline, donors have a different timeline, creates a lot of tension. So we have to be very careful in terms of how we approach that. But think about, the phases of a campaign. And we talk about phases. The planning phase is so important. So answering this thing about what's the case for support, determining what it is that needs to be done. What's a new building going to cost? We don't even know right now, and so we have to work carefully at that. What is the new building going to cost? we should always be looking at the test for readiness that the Fundraising School includes in the capital campaign. It's an old, very proven test for whether the organization is prepared to enhance its campaign or its fundraising capacity. So I think the test for readiness is an important place to start. We may have internal problems that we haven't even thought about. There are all kinds of things that organizations can do, no matter what the state of the economy. And in farming, there's this kind of there's an old saw that when hog prices are low, you get into hog business, because by the time they're ready to go to market, hog prices will be high. So you might begin planning a capital campaign when times are tough or the economy is uncertain, because by the time you get done planning, in fact, the economy may be ready to have a capital campaign. So I think those are some of the things that you might want to talk about. And the other thing, I think, Bill, is to always ask, what's the urgency of this? Is there urgency? Is there urgency to our case for support? We have a wonderful case for support. We know we can do something to better implement our mission or expand our mission. But what's the urgency of it? Did we lose a lease? Is a lease going to expire? We learned last night that a restaurant owner lost a restaurant because the person from whom she was leasing the space is going to build a parking garage in that space, more profitable than leasing this building to her. So now she's lost a restaurant. So it happens in all aspects of society, but we might lose a lease. Was there a storm and blew the roof off? And this is an opportunity for us to reconsider how we're going to house our program going forward. There are all kinds of things like this that get us into a sense of urgency. Without urgency, we also have a difficult time mounting a capital campaign. So from the test for readiness, it's time to think about a feasibility study. Once we've determined what we need to do, then let's look at a feasibility study. Let's look at a market study. Who are our prospects and how are they affected by the economy? How are they affected by the uncertainty in the economy? And uncertainty does cause some concerns. There is research that shows when people are uncertain about things, they're reluctant to take on new commitments, and so people draw back. But the other thing that I would remind us of is that not everyone in the economy is affected in the same way by uncertainty in the economy, and COVID showed this very clearly. Professionals, people who had the ability to work from home, people who had good investments did not suffer from COVID the way ordinary workers might have suffered from COVID. People who couldn't go to work. When a hurricane hits Sanibel, the restaurant workers all lose their jobs. The homeowners, the people who own condos, are insured. They'll be rebuilt, So think about that. COVID taught us about the K-shaped curve. Everything went down, but then stock market came back pretty quickly, and the ordinary parts of the economy went along at this level. So not everyone is affected the same way. And in a capital campaign, the theory is, at least, and we need research on this, Bill, that the campaign gift range charts are becoming steeper, that we have more larger gifts at the top of a capital campaign, which comprise a larger part of the campaign than we used to have. We tried to do some research on this. It's very difficult to do, but the consultants report to us that the gift that used to be 10% to lead off a capital campaign is now more likely to be 20% or 25%. And the first 10 gifts, instead of reaching, say, a 50% or 60% total, maybe the first 10 gifts are going to comprise I will say 70% of a campaign. So sometimes it's possible to do a capital campaign without filling out the bottom of the base and still be successful.
So, Gene, the test for readiness helps me know if my organization is ready. And it's okay if you fail that test, you stop, you fix what needs to be fixed, strengthen what needs to be strengthened, and that's okay. And then you talked about that feasibility study, which in large measure is talking with our donors. And, is it as clear as just saying if there is uncertainty? We've been talking about economic uncertainty. I'm glad you brought up things like weather related type of things, or maybe folks who just feel a heaviness because of wars and conflicts that are maybe happening in other parts of the world, or some people are happy with the current political situation or others are unhappy with the current political situation, and that can cause stress, and all of these things that can be working on the psyche of our donors. When you talk about these challenging times, is it as clear as saying the donors during the feasibility study are a big part in answering that question? Is this really a good time for a campaign, despite all the uncertainty folks might be feeling? Is it really that simple?
There is. So this is market-based research. It is in fact that simple. I think if you have the urgency if you have a case for support and there's urgency, and you test that case with donors and ask them whether they or others they know might be willing to participate in something like that. And donors tell you it's okay to go ahead and have a capital campaign, then it is in fact okay to go ahead and have a capital campaign. So there may be, the test for readiness might reveal that you've got a year's worth of work to do to build up your board, to find people who might be able to move from giving, say, $2,000 a year to giving you a $25,000 gift in a capital campaign. It may take some cultivation. You may not have the system in place inside the organization, or some kind of means of engaging people further, so that they might become potential $25,000 donors. And what all of my classes have said in all the years I've been teaching and working with capital people trying to do capital campaigns is that the middle of the chart is where everything breaks down. People haven't done enough work to get to the $25,000, $50,000 gifts in a capital campaign. The middle of the chart. They know who the top donors are. They know who the bottom donors are, but they haven't done anything to cultivate any of their donor base into the middle of the chart. But I think you're right, Bill. I'm going along with you on this, that the donors will tell us from the outside whether it's time to have a capital campaign, whether the uncertain economy or whatever's happening in the world is bothering them or not, whether they might be able to. I mean, the stock market is near a record high, and so there are assets in private equity that can be converted into philanthropy. And so more people have private foundations, more people have donor-advised funds and community foundations, so that there's a possibility, at least, that you might be able to find gifts there. Corporate giving last year was in pretty good shape. So there may be ways to help build a capital campaign, even when there is some uncertainty.
In that anecdotal observation about the middle of the gift range chart is quite intuitive to think about. As you mentioned, there is not one economy. There are at least two economies, maybe even more than that, based on education level, income level. And as you have reminded us, and we teach strongly at the Fundraising School, all gifts are important. All donors are important. All gift sizes are important. We want a broad range of people across all different gift levels to be supporting our annual fund and yes, our campaigns. And as you stated so well, the folks who have especially prospered, economic slowdowns don't affect them quite as much. And somebody who's at the base of the pyramid still might have that, kind of base level gift to be able to give. But those folks in the middle, the discretionary decision might be hitting them just a little bit harder. That is just so fascinating to think about the middle of our gift range chart with a capital campaign.
Well, and I think that, I always say that fundraising is a difficult work of engaging people in our cause. And we don't spend enough time thinking about how do we engage the $2,000 donor and make the, to the point where a $2,000 donor might become a $5,000 or a $10,000 donor. And so I think that the middle is where we fall down on engagement. So part of the test for readiness is going to ask us, do we have a system in place for generating gifts at the major gift level, for example, because we're looking for major gifts to help us be successful in this campaign. The donors at the base can help us complete the campaign, but the donors in the middle, the donors at the top, and the donors in the middle are the people who are going to help us make the campaign successful. So,
Gene, the pop culture reference that I always like to make, and as we conclude, I know you wanted to come back to this when I listed, kind of all the calamities since at least the mid 1970s, and it could have gone back even farther than that, of course, is the Billy Joel song, "We Didn't Start the Fire," right? And then when I bring that up, now my millennials, zillennial, and Gen Z participants and staff colleagues, by the way, say, oh yeah, there's a part 2 by a group called Fall Out Boys. And basically they continue the song with even more calamities and more challenges that have happened. And it sort of just says like these types of things are just part of human existence. And it's not great. It's not wonderful. We enjoy our times of peace and tranquility, but those sadly can be too few and far between. And so to get back to the big question then, Gene, is there really ever a bad time for a campaign if I've passed that readiness test and my feasibility conversations come up flashing green lights?
Well, I say if you have a case that's compelling and there's urgency, and the test for readiness tells you it's time internally, and the feasibility study says yes, then go forward with a capital campaign. But those dates that you mentioned, Ed.D, I was in the middle of capital campaigns at every one of those times. And so the point is that when you start a capital campaign, after you've done all the planning and you've initiated the campaign because everything said go, things like that happen. I was in the middle of a campaign in '87. I was in the middle of a campaign when 9/11 happened. I was in the middle of a campaign when the Great Recession happened. I was in the middle of a campaign with the Indiana Repertory Theater when COVID happened. And thankfully, the IRT was able to conclude its campaign, stop its campaign after having been successful with only 156 gifts. It never got to the bottom of the gift range chart because those are the people most affected in a negative way. When the Great Recession happened, people stopped giving. Indiana University lost 23,000 donors the first year of the Great Recession. But we were in the middle of a capital campaign, and we succeeded. That capital campaign succeeded. Not only that, but the president, raised the goal of the capital campaign, and we succeeded that goal. But so, it's possible to do that. Now, do you have to do workarounds? Yes, you have to do some workarounds with some donors. You may have to extend pledges, that kind of thing. So there are things you might have to do when things like that happen. What if you're in the middle of a capital campaign when a hurricane hits? I mean, there are things that might happen, and you can't predict them all. You can't predict them all in planning for a capital campaign and announcing in a capital campaign in the best of times, right?
And Gene, I know you also are a scholar and a teacher of leadership, and that's part of being a leader, having scenario planning, being able to adapt to changing circumstances. It is okay to pause a campaign. It is okay to adjust the timing of donors. It is okay to ask them to add a year to their pledge. Well, none of those things were in the original plan. Yeah, but neither was the Great Recession or the hurricane. And so it is okay to make those adaptations.
Yeah, and I think that's fine, Bill. It's like, in the beginning, you do the scenario planning, you do the what ifs. I always call it the what if situation. What if? And then you have a whole list of what if so such and such happens. And then your question is what might we do? And so you have some things ready. And then sometimes you don't realize that people weren't watching carefully when the Great Recession happened. It actually started way before the science became obvious. There was a whole year when people could have been thinking about what's going to happen, but they didn't. And most people think that things can be avoided, but then in the end, they can't. And right now, the stock market's high like this. I wonder every day, or I worry every day that because some other signs show weakness, and maybe the stock market's going to come down, but it seems resilient to that right now. So, and I'm sure there are people with wealth. And I look at my own retirement funds; they're in great shape right now. But will they always be that way?
And people, there are always those warning, will there be an AI bubble in the stock market? You hear all these different kinds of things. And, the great what if question is, what if Gene Tempel talked to Henry and Dorothy Rosso and asked them to donate the fundraising school to Indiana University? Well, we know the answer to that question. The fundraising school is now more than 50 years strong. It started with that gift cultivated by Dr. Gene Tempel, who then had the foresight for the Center on Philanthropy, which is now the Indiana University Lilly Family School of Philanthropy. And Gene, thank you with your expertise and also your wisdom born of experience to help us be thinking about all sorts of fundraising questions, including comprehensive campaigns, whether we're in a season of challenge or preparing for one of those. Thank you so much again for being with us on the Fundraising Schools podcast.
You're welcome, Bill. Good to be with you.
Always a delight. And again, that campaigns course is one of 27 that we teach, leading to 5 different certificates in person in 10 U.S. cities, online, anywhere around the world. Also available in our custom training when we can tailor-make curriculum just for you. We have quarterly webinars and these weekly podcasts. By the way, Gene also kept alive and has sustained Achieving Excellence in Fundraising, now out in its 5th edition. All of this available online at go.iu.edu/TFRS for the Fundraising School. I'm grateful for our producers today, Mike Anthony and Molly Gross. I'm Bill Stanczykiewicz. Now you are now more fully informed on this first day from the Fundraising School.